Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see more people in here. I guess waiting was worth it. So, um, yeah, so my work is on Hindi and Urdu in the Roman script. So some background on Hindi and Urdu first. Um, they're closely related languages spoken in India and Pakistan. Um, Hindi is the official language in India and Urdu in Pakistan. Um, the really the main salient difference between them is that they traditionally have different scripts, and you can see on that sign they're quite like visually distinctive as well. And it's a sociocultural division where Hindus overwhelmingly identify as Hindi speakers and Muslims overwhelmingly as Urdu speakers. Now, the Brits tried to introduce the Roman script during colonization, and they created an official system for doing this. And this didn't really work. It didn't really catch on. Um, and it yeah, just wasn't used for a long time until around the 1990s when it really exploded in use. And this was a version of it that was sort of may have been inspired by like the original like standardizations that were done in British India, but it really had evolved on its own since then, and nobody imposed the use of the Roman script. It just kind of grew organically, and um, you might think that this is like an online thing. It's about technology, but the use of the Roman script for Hindi and Urdu seems to have far outpaced many other languages that have other scripts. And also, it's not just an online or a instant messaging thing. You see here like it is used a lot online. You see some tweets here, and I've done some work on Twitter. But also, if you go to India or Pakistan in the cities, you'll see it everywhere. And these are some examples of that. And it's also something that's talked about a fair amount. It's a topic of discourse. There have been political scandals in both directions. Using the Roman script and not using the Roman script has been controversial in India and in Pakistan. Um, Similarly, people complain about the Roman script being westernized, and they also say we should switch to the Roman script to be more modern. Um, and then another thing that often gets criticized is the perceived lack of consistency of the script. And so this is a response I got on Reddit when I was trying to recruit participants. And it actually goes on for a lot longer. But you see them like complaining about not sounds not having unique representations, and um, in general, they're wrong about that. Um, these are sort of what we know about the Roman script so far for Hindi-Urdu. So as I say, it's used a ton. It's ubiquitous online, especially. Um, I have found the first work I did on this. I found that the orthography on Twitter is actually very consistent. There actually is a one-to-one phoneme to grapheme correspondence in a lot of cases, and when there's not, there's a good reason for it. I presented that at this conference 2 years ago, and 2 days ago at the Prescriptivism conference, I presented some work on users' instinct for what is correct and incorrect, and they're similarly users have very clear, very consistent ideas of the right and wrong ways of spelling. Even though they're not aware of these intuitions and they're not aware that there are right and wrong ways of spelling. And so like, and you can see that here where the top spelling is by far the most preferred by people, and I can talk about that more later if people would like. But this topic is really about the next step for me, which is understanding like how users feel about the Roman script and some other background on romanization of other writing systems. The main studied ones are Greek and Arabic, and the key thing for this presentation is that they both seem to have very agreed upon names. And I wasn't aware of like what people who use Roman Hindi and Roman Urdu call it. They generally are. It generally is called Roman in India and Pakistan, at least like in the discourse that you can see. But yeah, I that was the other thing I wanted to know how people feel about it and what they call it. This was done in a questionnaire that I conducted and that was distributed in Hindi and in Urdu. I got 79 participants, and I asked about a lot more things than what I'll talk about here, but I'll focus on those two research questions right now. And so looking at some of the results, starting with what people call it, you can see here there's no consensus. You know, almost everyone responded to this, but you know, we didn't get more than 20 responses for anything. We did see some differences between Hindi and Urdu speakers, so only Hindi speakers call it Hinglish. Urdu speakers seem to prefer the term Roman and also the terms Pink Urdu and Pink English, which seem to be similar. They seem to refer to like mixing of Urdu with other languages. But this was really interesting to me that there isn't a consensus, and there are many more like you can see some people said they didn't have a name for it. Most people said something, but everybody gave a different answer. And so I don't really know what it means. Obviously, this is different from what we see for Greek and Arabic, and I don't know what it means for something not to have a name, like whether it's a spoken or written variety. I would love to hear what feedback people have on that. As I say, it is generally called Roman, like in discourse. My hunch is that this is something to do with not viewing Roman Hindi-Urdu as like legitimate, not really viewing it as like a real writing system, and that's why it doesn't have a name. Yeah, I'm not really sure. That's something that'll be really interesting to look more into. And then the other thing is how people feel about use of the Roman script. And so starting with just asking participants if they do use the Roman script, and most of them do. Across all ages, pretty much. Older people were just a little bit less likely to do it. And I asked them if they do it for instant messaging, and a lot of people don't use it all the time, but they do seem to use the Roman script more than the traditional scripts, and it's similar for social media posts. But not for reading. So for reading, people do seem to prefer the traditional scripts, and they prefer them more for like more traditional forms of media, like books and newspapers. So I gave them this statement: the Roman script is bad for the Hindi or Urdu language, and you can see that it's complicated. There are a lot of different answers. A lot of people were neutral, but about twice as many participants agreed with the statement than disagreed. So most people by far use the Roman script, but their attitudes, their opinions about it are more negative than positive. And I similarly just asked them, like, in a free response question, like, what do you think of the Roman script? And I again got more negative responses, and some of the negative responses, as you can see, were very negative. A lot were also context dependent. But yeah, I would be a psychopath to write it in Roman. Writing it IRL is shameable, not a good idea. Probably this top one, it's the last remaining way for me to stay close to my home and my language. I mean, that was by a Urdu speaker, but in India, where the Hindi script is more often used. Probably that was the most positive response I got. Then there were neutral and mixed responses as well. And yeah, so maybe this pattern that you can pick up on, and it was more clear when I also asked, like, why do you use the Roman script? And a lot of what people think of the Roman script is that it's practical, and a lot of the reasons people use the Roman script, I guess there's two main ones. Actually, there's the practicality, and there's like the sociocultural reasons. So the practicality would be it's easier it's easier to type. And I guess I included that twice. I don't know if I believe that. Like I guess something being easier to type can mean a few things. It could mean that they just don't know how. It can mean that they it can mean that it actually is like physically easier to type in the Roman script based on the Devanagari and Perso-Arabic keyboards that exist. Or it could mean that somehow it's cognitively difficult. So I'm not exactly sure which one of those it is, if any. Maybe it's just perceived that way. Also, it's seen as cool, and it's seen as appropriate for certain contexts. So there are contexts that people thought like it would be weird to use the traditional scripts. And then when I asked people why they use the traditional scripts, a lot of them viewed them as being correct or better. I mean, you don't see that attitude with the Roman script at all. But going further into the sociocultural reasons, like, where would those even come from if people's views about the Roman script are negative? And there are a few things, it's really hard to know, but there are a few things I can speculate about. So there is this attitudes towards English in South Asia, where they really try to distance themselves from it after independence, but at the same time, a lot of there remained a lot of English language education and a lot of English-speaking urban elites. And there are a lot of other languages spoken in India and Pakistan. Speakers of those languages aren't necessarily happy about Urdu and Hindi being official. And then maybe again, the prestige of English with regard to globalization and economic development, especially starting in the 90s, which is when the use of the Roman script seems to have taken off. And this is an example of the second point. So there was a lot of there was some backlash from the non-Hindi speaking parts of India for adding this Devanagari numeral to the 500 rupee note. So yeah, so it seems that there's this sort of dichotomy where the majority of my participants use the Roman script, but they, on the balance, don't really seem to like it. And there's also no agreed upon name for it. And sort of my takeaways with this. It seems that this thank you. It seems that this the use of the Roman script for Hindi-Urdu, it seems like it just came about on its own. It was never imposed by anybody, and people don't even like it. But it's just like it just seems to have become part of the culture. It's something that people don't like, but they also like can't stop doing. Um, and um, um, and yeah, I'm also really interested to find out more about why it might not have a name. Thank you. My references are here.
We do have time for questions. I have one I wanted to ask.
Mhm.
You referred briefly to the attempt at an imposed system using the wrong letter. Is there a way you could summarize briefly what the differences are you observed?
Oh yeah.
Version?
Yeah, the main one, the like main visible one, is that there are no diacritics used today. More going more in depth, the British system, and there were actually many of them, so that maybe that was part of the problem. But the systems that people created had there was a grapheme assigned to each phoneme, and that actually might not be what makes the most sense. You know, some sounds in a language are much less common than others, and maybe it doesn't really create that much more ambiguity for those sounds to share letters with other sounds, and that way you don't need to worry about things like diacritics or the system being unnecessarily complicated.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you for the talk. I have a couple of comments on my question. So I work a lot with people in rural India. One of the trends I'm noticing is that they use voice, like instead of typing in Hindi or English.
Yes.
They're using voice or on WhatsApp. That's become very common, and sometimes voice to text. And you can actually get, if they think I'm more comfortable in English, then it'll just translate it. But that's a separate thing. The other thing, I don't know if you did in your study, in your research, was now you have these really good keyboards which allow you to type in English, and it doesn't correct the spelling; it just stays in Hindi or Urdu, which is interesting. And I guess my main question is, in terms of the demographic skew in your, I think 72 or 79 you interviewed. What backgrounds are they from, and what age groups, and are they like rural based or urban based? Because that's a huge difference in the use of English versus Hindi or English, for instance.
Yes, yeah. With regard to the Roman input keyboard, that at least from what I can tell, does not seem to be popular either, and that is interesting because I talked to a few people who said like they actually feel like it's actually those are actually pretty hard to use. But yeah, I'm not sure. They were from all over the world. So some were from India, and the majority were from India and Pakistan. I think something like 15 or 20 of them were from outside, and most of those were from the US, and some were from the UK. And they were pretty evenly split between Hindi and Urdu speakers, but there were a few more Muslims than Hindus. Looking at religion, I did ask what if they're urban or rural. I have not looked at that data yet, but I'm almost certain that most of them are urban.
You not question. In Arabic, from what I know, in Egypt, they use the term Franco Arab, or what you call Arabism. And that's what they have a different term, in fact, from spontaneous.
Okay.
My feeling is that this phenomenon is very common in beginning of the years of the internet, and when keyboards, when Arabic keyboards were not that developed. But now, as far as I can see, they most people on Facebook and WhatsApp communicate via the Arabic letters. So my question is that a question of a keyboard? How many letters you need to write in every script? Given that in English you need around 30 letters. Yeah, that's the number of keys you have on a keyboard. Same thing in Arabic, approximately. So is that the same would that be an explanation?
Yeah, the Urdu script has a few more letters than Arabic.
Do you need to press a key and hit a special character regularly or not? That's my question. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I suspect not regularly. I suspect more of the issue would probably be people not being familiar with it. With the Devanagari keyboard, I have heard more like specific issues that people have with it. Including that, like you have the consonants on one side and the vowels on the other, and maybe also, like I say, the sort of having to choose a consonant and a vowel doesn't really match how people think about an abugida as each syllable being a unit. With regard to yeah, what you described with Arabic, I didn't know that there was another name for it in Egypt. That also, from what I understand, was the case in Greek as well, where it has become less popular over time to use the Roman script.
Something?
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk later.
Sure.
So, because I've done a lot of research on how English was being replaced with the use of English in India, for instance. And I think one of the factors so I've noticed over COVID, a lot of the people, the craftsmen I work with, they now use the Latin alphabet in the text messaging in WhatsApp, which they never used to do. And I don't know if you did research on that, but like what I have researched is that earlier advertising used to be very separate, like in the 80s and 90s. English was for more upscale things like cars, and Hindi or other scripts were used for washing powder or soaps, etc. And then there was a transition in the early 2000s where the Latin script was used for Hindi and other languages, not only in advertising, but also in packaging and Bollywood. And that made a huge transition. So a lot of people, even if they don't know the English alphabet, they can figure out what certain words are. I think that's it. And over COVID, it really changed dramatically my experience of the use of them as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to talk more about that later.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. I have a comment and a question. First of all, for Urdu, I think that for every time you have an aspirated consonant, you might have to add an additional modifier, but I don't have too much experience.
Yeah, you add another letter, but both letters should be it should be like typing SH or TH, I think.
Yeah, the comment is that I can personally attest to how unpleasant of an experience it is to type on a keyboard any Indic script. Dash Keyboard seems to be a good website for it, but then you have to go to a third-party website, copy paste the text. It's not fun. The question that I had was specifically on the conventions that you saw developing in terms of spelling and right or wrong. And I was wondering if you could give one or two more examples of that. Since do you see a development of consensus for a lot of the spellings, or do you see a sort of mix? There seems to be no established variant for what correct spelling is.
So I only looked at 4 words. I looked at some vowels, I looked at nasal vowels. The words I looked at, pretty much all of them had consensus. There is at least, I've looked more at just the like orthographic conventions than the intuitions, but there are cases where the sort of consensus seems to break down. Some of it is like for representations that would need to be longer, like geminate aspirated stops where you need like 3 or 4 character representations for. That seems harder for people to keep straight. Yeah, maybe certain sounds that are rare also, like the retroflex flap. Also, there seemed less consensus.
Yes, I was wondering what exactly caused the explosion of people using the Latin script in the early 90s without any government pressure? And
Yeah,
What plan do we use on? 90 is brick phones.
yeah. You'd think
Yeah, that makes
computers and mobile devices.
Can I have a comment?
Yeah.
There was a comment about green list, but that's easy. You massive explosion of green list. Late 90s, early
Yeah.
2000s, with stupid brick phones with buttons. It's just a mess. You just use Latin characters. The moment you have smartphones, it's a little bit easier. Huge drop recently because all the lazy young people just dictate.
Yeah.
So nobody types, and in a way, the autocorrect fixes the things. It's good enough to just get a Greek dictation and it works. So you have actually almost no precipitous drop in Greekness in social media.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, laziness.
There you go.
Yeah.
The time for one lazy question. All right, and thank you again.
All right.